Earlier today, I spoke with investor and GMO co-founder Jeremy Grantham, who told me he thinks we're in a magnificent equity bubble in the US. I asked him about some of the things he is holding, though, including US-based venture capital names.
I regret that it has to be so much in the US, but the US, to be honest, is extraordinarily powerful in venture capital. It raises a lot more money. It has a lot more enterprises. The quality of the whole industry is much higher. The society is more attuned to investing in risky enterprises, in forgiving people who failed. No, the whole culture, the existence of the great research universities, which is critical to venture capital. The US has a death grip on the great research university, and a handful of others tend to be in the UK. But it's very hard to avoid the US in venture capital. And I think, as you know, venture capital is far and away the most healthy part of modern capitalism. It really does something useful. It's in full cry, companies starting everywhere. And in the green area, really important, promising new technologies springing out of the woodwork at all the great universities. And if you look at the FANGs, they were all the product of the US VC industry. They're all pretty recent companies when you get down to it. These are not offshoots of the Procter & Gamble's and the Exxons. Even Microsoft and Apple started when my firm at GMO was starting. So these are not old enterprises, and the rest are teenagers.
Mm-hmm. In terms of, you mentioned green investment there as well. I wonder what your views were, Jeremy, when it came to the public markets on that topic, and ESG in particular, whether that is genuinely an asset class, whether it deserves genuine higher multiples, or whether people are just sort of paying lip service to it in a sort of slightly false way.
Well, Wilf, I've got to admit that ESG is kind of complicated and basically over my pay grade. As I like to say at a conference, you know, S&G, what's not to like? Good behavior. Who doesn't love good behavior? But E is about our survival. If we don't fix the E, our society as we know it will start to crumble. And my God, have we seen some really lousy weather since we last spoke? The floods and fires all around the world. The fires in the north of Russia were bigger than all the rest of them added together in the world, which included the biggest California fires ever recorded. So the weather is going to hell. Everybody is beginning to recognize the dangers of climate change. The governments quite suddenly in the last 18 months are getting behind it. I would say in the public tradable markets that greening the economy, decarbonizing the whole industrial system, it's the biggest challenge we have ever faced, really. It will take many trillions of dollars, and it will dominate the investment opportunities of the future in the tradable market and in the venture capital market. In the venture capital market, when did you have an industry with such a following wind that every government is thinking about it? Most governments are working on bringing in carbon taxes, which will make half of the VC investments we see suddenly much more viable. We absolutely need a carbon tax. And around the world, they're coming in fairly thick and fast, and China introduced one in the last 6 months.
What do you say when you see the likes of Exxon or BP embrace ESG? Does that make you tempted to then buy the stocks or not?
No, it makes me very nervous about greenwashing, of course. These are the guys who've tried to persuade us that climate change was no problem. And they knew very well since the 1970s it was. They probably cost us 10, 15, 20 years of absolutely precious time, because we are going to, through technology, we're going to get out of these problems one day. We will have plenty of cheap green energy. We'll have plenty of cheap green storage, one way or the other. We will decarbonize the steel industry, and the plastics will be replaced by bioplastics that will grow. The problem is time. We're just taking too long, and the damage building up in the environment is getting to be already very painful. And before we finish this, the 415 parts per million of carbon dioxide that we have, up from 280 in the last 200 years, it's going to go to 550. We are going to go sailing through 2 degrees centigrade. And we've seen the damage that happens at 1.1. And it's geometric. It doesn't increase. You don't get twice the damage at 2 degrees that you get at 1 degree. You probably get 4 or 5 times the damage. And at 3 degrees centigrade, perish the thought, which we may get to, you'll have another 5 or 10 times the damage. It really is a serious threat. We really have to address it, and we are beginning to address it on a global basis. And the critical problem that we can't replace is time. And these Exxon guys, they cost us 10 or 15 years, and Lord knows, I hope one day they pay for it.